It's 7:04 p.m. on August 1st, 2023. This is the Sherborn Zoning Board of Appeals. If you are looking for national news on indictments or other exciting national news events, you're on the wrong channel. Please change to another one. The Zoning Board of Appeals is 3 members and 1 associate member right now. I'm Rick Novak. I'm the chair. Jonathan Fitch has been on the board with me for several years. Zach McBride just joined us a couple of meetings or so ago, but he's got vast seniority on Todd, who's this is his first meeting. And I'd like to talk, as I usually do on these 40Bs, about just a couple preliminary items, because a lot of the people on the call may not have been through the 40B process before. There are 40B projects all over town. 69 North Main Street is one of them. It was called the Sweet Meadow. It was called Rising Tide. The thing over by Ashland on Whitney Farms, I think is one of its names. Over by Ashland is a 40B. Southfields, which used to be known as the Fields of Sherborn, is also a 40B. And there's some proposed ones up on Coolidge Street, but those aren't built yet. The ZBA has a statutory obligation to follow the Massachusetts General Laws Chapter 40B statute and implement it fairly. It's designed to encourage affordable housing by eliminating local obstacles that are seen as unfair or unreasonable. In my view, 40B has always been the classic Massachusetts legislative fix of trying to get something for nothing. The something is more affordable housing. The nothing is paying the associated infrastructure and schooling costs, and assuming that those are free. They aren't. And as everyone in business knows, something for nothing does not work. But it is the statute we have, and we are obliged to administer it fairly. It's on the books. The most zealous 40B supporter would argue that all local restrictions are simply disguises for local prejudice, trying to exclude persons of the wrong color or socioeconomic background. To those zealots, by the way, I would point out that in the town of Sherborn, our first affordable housing was built town-sponsored and paid for with town tax money. So people need to think about that. Pro 40B zealots also see 40B developers as knights in shining armor, created needed affordable housing at enormous personal sacrifice. Anti-40B zealots see those same 40B developers as clever manipulators of a rigged system, lining their pockets by steamrolling local requirements and building 3 McMansions right on the property line for every affordable unit. Like a lot of things in life, wisdom probably lies between those 2 extremes, and each citizen gets to decide for themselves where they fall on that spectrum. But what is not open to dispute is that the ZBA is obligated to follow the statute and regulations as they are written. Most applications are approved with conditions. The town can disapprove for a variety of reasons, but the principal ones usually involve lack of site control, there's a title problem or a title restriction, or a legitimate and demonstrable health and safety problem, lack of water, contamination of the septic, contamination of the wells next door, certain types of traffic safety. But it's equally clear that the town does not have the right to approve for reasons such as, well, we don't like the school costs, or the density is higher than zoning, or, well, the design of this project isn't the town's look and feel, or just this project just isn't consistent with the town's character. There's a long line of 40B cases that say we cannot rely on any of those grounds. So no matter how strongly you may feel on those topics, the board cannot base any of its decisions on those sort of prohibited grounds. Conduct during our hearings. It's a lot like town meeting. No cheering, no applause, no booing. The abutters don't have to like the applicant, and the applicant does not have to like the abutters, but everyone has to be courteous. And like town meeting, it's fine to agree with a prior person's comment. Repeating it ad nauseum does not make it more persuasive by repeating it 15 times. This won't be the last hearing tonight, I guarantee it. There will be other chances to comment if you want to comment verbally. Submitting written comments is fine. In fact, it's strongly encouraged because then it's part of our record. So with those preliminaries, I'd ask if the applicant has anyone who wants to speak to do, oh, I'm sorry, one more housekeeping matter. We're going to try to end at 9 o'clock tonight. And our other hearings, I think we're going to try to do that too. There will be a lot of them. There will be a lot of chances, but I think in consideration of people's family and time, I think 2-hour windows ought to do it. We can reopen that if we wish to. So having said all that, is there anybody named Lynn Sweet who wants to speak for the developer?
Thank you, Rick. It's nice to see everybody. Appreciate your time this evening. I'm Lynn Sweet. For the record, I'm with LDS Consulting Group. We're based in Wellesley, Massachusetts. Other members of our team tonight are the applicant, Bob Murchison, our attorney from Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, and Silverstein. Jonathan Silverstein is here as well, as I believe Deshane Wang is here from Creative Land and Water Engineering. So I'm going to quickly run through a few slides and then hand it over to Bob if it is the will of the chairman for me to start our presentation.
Please.
Great. So can everybody see this?
I can.
Okay, great. So just for whatever reason, I'm just moving my little screen off. So the property is located at 55 to 65 Farm Road in Sherborn. And this is an overview of a sketch of what it might look like if built as requested. On cue, Zoya has joined me. I will get rid of her. You've all seen her before. I know Rick touched a little bit on some of the legal issues around 40B. Just from a process standpoint, we started this process back in May, filing for a project eligibility letter. And there was, the town was granted a 60-day comment period for Mass Housing to submit comments to Mass Housing. We had a very robust site walk with many town officials and board representatives. And the town did submit a comment letter in July, and Mass Housing made its findings in November of last year. The project eligibility letter is what allows us to file for the comprehensive permit with the ZBA, and the findings are very general in nature that have to do with site control, appropriateness, and so on and so forth. So we are looking forward to the public process that lies ahead. So we did file with your board in early July. Sometimes municipalities are interested in getting a grant from Mass Housing Partnership. Sometimes if you don't have a planner or smaller towns, it's great to have somebody that has technical expertise come and help. And every applicant under a 40B contributes into a fund that pays for these technical assistance. And this is really just the timeline of a 40B hearing process, mainly for the new members. We have, I believe we've opened within 30 days of when we filed, and that typically, or the statute sets forth that you are to have hearings for 180 days, at which time you can close the hearing and make a decision. I know we've got a lot of ground to cover, so that's really just a negotiation between the developer and the ZBA as to if everyone feels we're making good progress and there's still some matters to look at, that time period can be extended. If and when a comprehensive permit is granted by the board, and I'll leave it up to you and your attorneys to, to educate yourselves about what kind of decisions you can make. If a comprehensive permit issues, it's not really the end of the process. The applicant will go back to Mass Housing for final approval to deal with a lot of the legal matters around affordability and before obtaining a building permit. So the subsidizing agency, in this case, Mass Housing, has several looks at it, as well as presumably most decisions do have conditions, as Rick noted, and the building inspector is the one that will be ensuring that those conditions, for the most part, are complied with. So really what we're asking for today is we're asking the board to make findings once they've heard all of the evidence that our team will be presenting over the next 6 months, that we're asking you to find that the applicant has site control, that they have met Mass Housing requirements under the statute, that the town is currently under the 10% statutory affordable housing requirement, and that the project is consistent with local needs within the meaning of Chapter 40B. It's a balancing act. The regional, basically the balancing act is the regional need for affordable housing, whether or not that outweighs local concerns. And so just generally, it's a 14-acre site. What's being proposed are 32 homes. They will be for sale homes. They are small New England style cottages in a series of different clusters, a series of different sizes. 8 of those units are will be income restricted to 80% of the area median income, and 24 will be priced at market. And it's a mixture of single family detached homes and attached duplex homes. And I think you're going to hear a lot more about this from Bob, but we do feel that the plan that you have in front of you complies with the town's planning documents. Within Sherborn's master plan, the vision for the future is that housing options in Sherborn will accommodate residents of diverse ages and economic resources while preserving the town's semi-rural atmosphere, environmental and sustainability. And in particular, under the housing production plan, which you have in the last year, I believe, updated, it states that you're seeking more affordable home ownership options, including small cottage-style homes and cluster developments, condominiums, and townhouses. So we do feel that the local planning documents encourage the kind of housing that we've brought to you today. So all of the 8 affordable homes will be eligible for the state's subsidized housing inventory. They will have a deed restriction on them in perpetuity, meaning that affordability is never going to go away. They will be subject to a lottery that the state subsidizing agency will approve, so that the units will be sold via lottery in a fair and public process. The affordable restriction is often referred to as a regulatory agreement, and that's something that the subsidizing agency sets forth that talks about the terms for long-term affordability, and the town has the ability to actually sign on to that agreement, be a party to the agreement, get all of the notices with regard to affordability under that agreement. And also the town has the ability to request a local preference for up to 70% of the affordable units. Again, that happens at the final approval stage. And every year, Mass Housing has monitoring agents that will be in touch with the homeowners. So they don't just sell units and sort of walk away. There is somebody in charge of ensuring the long-term affordability and answering questions and helping with refinances and sales. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Bob, and I will try and flip through the slides as he speaks. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. As many of you know, I'm Bob Murchison. I think I know probably about 3/4 of the people on the call. And I just have a couple of high-level comments, and then I'll move through these slides fairly quickly because I'm sure. I'm sorry? The first thing I'd like to say is that we very much look forward to working with this board, getting into all the details of this project, and we want to do it through the lens of rigorous science and engineering, and I think the board will agree that that's where we're going to spend the next 6 months primarily. The other thing I want to say is that even though this project is not where I started on this land, I want to tell people very strongly that I am really very excited about this project and about all the things that this project can do for the town. There's going to be a huge demand for this type of home and this type of community design. This community will add something that Sherborn needs. It's going to add multi-generational living. It's going to add much less expensive homes in our market. And really, really importantly, it's going to bring new folks to our community. And I think all communities thrive when they have new folks join them. So again, I'm really excited about bringing this community to town. The next slide, Lynn. I think most people on the call probably know this site and have been driving past it as long as I have. I've been driving past this site for 23 years. I think it's a beautiful spot, and I think it's going to be a beautiful spot for a new community. Next slide. This slide's a little hard to read, but I guess what I would say is that if you look at the topography, what you're going to realize fairly quickly is that the way we laid out the community is very much driven by the topography. The land really kind of told us where the homes belong. If you're kind of looking at the big site, it was two parcels of land that I purchased, about 16.5 acres. The existing home at 55 Farm Road has been carved out of that on about 1.5 acres. And then there's another home closer to Farm Road that's being built now at 53 Farm Road. And then, excuse me, the remaining 14 acres are the subject of this proposal. Next slide, please. So as Lynn kind of alluded to earlier, I really feel like this project meets Sherborn's stated goals. We've designed smaller homes, allowing for market pricing well below typical Sherborn single-family homes. This more achievable pricing will attract both young families and downsizing seniors. The first cohort of those, of course, are at Abbey Road. This will give another opportunity for downsizing seniors in our community. And I think the combination of downsizing folks and young families creating a multi-generational community is really, really exciting. The lower pricing also will attract residents that couldn't otherwise afford to be in our community, with different backgrounds of experience, perspective, and economic means. This site is amazing. It allows, through town forest, on town paths, for the residents to walk to the Pine Hill School, to walk to the town center, and to walk to Farm Pond. And then lastly, I would say the site is surrounded by, on 3 sides, by 175 acres of town land, which provides a valuable buffer for this type of open space community. Next slide, please. So since our Pell letter was issued, we've made a few changes. They're not terribly significant, but we did make a slight reduction in the size of our homes. The primary reason to do that was going back to my concept of being able to sell these homes kind of below the typical Sherborn market. We've reduced the density slightly on the Farm Road frontage. Instead of 8 homes, we now have 7, and those homes are slightly smaller. We've done a slight reconfiguration of the internal roadway. We wanted to get just a touch further from the wetlands, the pond to the east. The solar installations shown have been decentralized from where we originally sited them the first go around, and we've done a lot more soil testing. Oh, the other thing I would say is that we, and this is important, since the Pell, we've moved the wells significantly to the north and the east to move them much further away from our own septic system and also to the neighbors' wells. Let's see. So this is just some basic statistics. The size range of our homes is from 1,100 square feet to just above 2,000 square feet. We're proposing 22 bedroom homes and 12 3-bedroom homes. 28 of the homes will have 2-car garages. 4 of them will be cottages and have surface parking. And then we currently are showing 13 visitor parking spaces. Next slide, please. I think this community, from a sustainability perspective, is really going to be something very, very different than pretty much anything currently in Sherborn. It's really going to be 21st century sustainability features. We will have a solar array on site, as I've shown. I'm hoping, and I believe that this may be the first fossil fuel-free community in the western suburbs. Our homes will adhere to the stretch code, include energy-efficient envelopes, mechanical systems to minimize heating and cooling. All resident parking will be wired for electric vehicles. Importantly, all of the heating and cooling will be electric source heat pumps. Appliance and fixtures, Energy Star certified, and finishes will be low VOC. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend much time on the architecture. There's a lot of stuff on the town website that we've put up. This is just one facade view. You can see that it is kind of New England cottages, modern farmhouse style, which they're writing articles about that now in the New York Times. I would say that we've been doing modern farmhouse homes all over Sherborn for a long, long time, and the rest of the world has realized that it's a good look, and that's what we're proposing here. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through all of the exterior materials and such. You can read them for yourselves, but it'll be, high quality materials. This is going to be a nice looking community. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the layout of these homes. This home we're calling 3-bedroom front loaded. The primary bedroom is upstairs along with the 2 other bedrooms. It's a design that's probably more likely to be purchased by families so that the parents and the kids are all upstairs. Like all of the designs, it's very efficient. I think it'll work well. Most of that particular style of home will be in the back of the site. The next slide, please. This one has a first floor. It's a 3-bedroom, but it does have a first floor master or primary bedroom. And I think this is a home that could be purchased by either families or downsizing folks who do have a need for 3 bedrooms. Next slide, please. The 2-bedroom duplex home is also very efficient design. Next slide, please. And lastly, the 2-bedroom cottage, very, very tight at 1,100 square feet. And I would say that in some ways, I'm very, very excited about these 4 homes because where can you buy a new home in a community like Sherborn for $650,000? This is really going to bring new possibilities to people that couldn't otherwise join our community. Next slide, please.
Hey Bob, can I have
Yes.
just one quick interruption? A housekeeping matter that I should have mentioned is that the chat is not part of our record. And so if you have an important question, either make it during the comment period or you can send it in writing. But in general, the chat is not preserved. It's not part of our record. So
And I'll also say about that, Rick, that I'm over 60 years old, and chewing gum and walking at the same time, reading chat and trying to answer and give a presentation, I'm not doing. So I'm just going to do the presentation. And if you'd like me to take questions later, I'm happy to, but I'm not going to be following the chat while I finish up on these slides. So next slide is on water. And as I said before, we very intentionally moved the wells as far away from the neighbors and as close to the town conservation land as we possibly can. We've worked with DEP to determine their comfort with our wells being private, and they have indicated to us that they're comfortable with that. We went through a very rigorous process with them. The distance of the new wells to the closest abutting neighbors is one neighbor is 558 feet away, and another neighbor is 859 feet away. All the other neighbors, I believe, are further than 1,000 feet from our wells. The wells are spaced at least 100 feet from each other, in excess of both the the Sherborn BOH requirement of 75 feet between wells and the Mass DEP requirement of 50 feet. All wells are located up gradient of the septic system, and the well sightings meet the town bylaw requirements. Next slide, please. This slide is on septic. A common on-site wastewater treatment disposal system is going to service the development. It'll be 8,360 gallons per day. It'll be innovative technology to treat the wastewater, and we're going to be exceeding the secondary standards as required. The septic field is going to be located in a broad valley, separated by 2 hills from the abutting wells and septic. The nearest neighbor to the nearest neighbor's well to our septic is 375 feet, and that is about 2.5 times the local Board of Health requirement of 150 feet, and Massachusetts requires 100 feet. And finally, I'll say that the soil and groundwater testing over the last 1.5 years have been witnessed by Mark Oram over at the Board of Health. Next slide, please. I'm not going to try to, this is, sorry, my slides were off. The stormwater management system, you can see, is going to, I mean, this is very, very standard stuff. There's not much of a local bylaw on stormwater that's different from the state standards. And of course, we'll be designing it to meet all of this, meet and exceed the DEP standards. We're going to be using low impact development techniques. In some ways, the stormwater basins are a more natural design. We're going to have Deshang speak to that, I'm sure, at another meeting. There'll be a pre-treatment system. The driveways will have not much of a berm, and there'll be the water will be allowed to create a much more natural runoff. The entire distribution and treatment kind of mimics the existing natural landscape. Next slide, please. I'm not going to really speak to this. There's a ton going on in this slide. I think you know, people can review this on their own. I guess what I would say is that if you look at our site, we've got wetlands on the western border running pretty much the entire length of the western border. The septic system is about 125 feet from those wetlands. And then on the eastern side of the site, really the southeastern side of the site, there's a man-made pond, as most of you know. I actually was terribly, terribly surprised at how deep that pond is. It was significantly deeper than I thought it was driving by it for 20-odd years. And I think most people are familiar with it. It's a very, very attractive pond. It was built in the early 1980s. I believe, by the Mudge family. Next slide, please. There's not a lot to talk about on the landscape plan. I think it kind of speaks for itself. You know, we'll be adding more detail as we go along. And next slide. This is a list, an initial list of the dimensional waivers that we're seeking. I think the ZBA understands, but I'll explain for the larger group that this is a process of determining what waivers we need and which will ultimately be approved by the ZBA is a little bit of an iterative process. And we anticipate that it will change over time as we kind of go through the details of the design with the ZBA. You know, I can speak to the density of this. This is a 1 acre zone. It's called RA in Sherborn, which means you need 1 acre and 150 feet of frontage. This proposal is about 2.25 homes per acre. Whereas, you know, typically if you had the frontage, you could build 14 homes on 14 acres. So obviously a 40B project is going to be more dense. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the traffic survey that we had done. I'll just read to you some of the take homes that this will not result in significant impact or an increase in motorist delays. There are no apparent safety deficiencies. The project can be accommodated within the confines of existing transportation infrastructure in a safe and efficient manner. And then there are a few more slides on the traffic, but I'm really not going to spend any time on them tonight. And I'll kick it back to Lynn. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bob.
Lynn,
I think you're up.
Yep. Sorry about that. Just trying multitasking here. Thank you, Bob. So, you know, at this point in time that we just wanted to give everybody a very quick overview, introduce our team. And then again, if it's your meeting, we would like to talk about potentially getting the peer reviews started and scheduling some future meetings.
Sure. Before we go to that, if the applicant team will accommodate me, I do have two new to this process members, and we can't meet outside of a public hearing. So Todd or Zach, if there's anything that this is sort of what the heck's going on here, now's the time to answer your questions. Jonathan and I will try to answer them for you. You can also ask them later. Okay.
No, I've done my homework. I think I'm pretty up to date at the moment. So
all right, awesome. And for anyone else on the call, there is on the town website. Jeannie, didn't Mass Housing put out a guide to 40Bs that I think is in your land development materials that anybody can look at? It's on
the front page of the website, and I believe it's in the land development section also. Right.
It is put out by the sponsor of 40B, so it's not unbiased as to the advisability and desirability of 40Bs, but it is helpful and does have a lot of good guidance about what can and can't be done and sort of what's going on here and what Murchison is talking about and what we're talking about. Okay, so turning back to the project, Lynn, is there any chance that you had some conversations with someone who might be our recently retired planner about peer reviews?
Coincidentally, I have. We discussed.
Would you like to share?
We discussed that the town has, I guess, used Tetra Tech in the past, and
Yes.
We have had experience with them representing municipalities on other 40Bs. So we think that that would be terrific if the board or the recently retired town planner would like to get a quote for them to review traffic and public safety and stormwater and Title V and septic and wells and water. We would be amenable to that. We're hoping to have traffic up first. It seems to be a little bit easier. And I will even go so far as volunteering that we will have Bob put some money down on deposit in your 53G account.
Okay. Jeannie Guthrie, can you reach out to Gino or find out from Jeremy who the right person to reach out to is to see if we can get that quote from Tetra Tech. As soon as it comes in, let's share it with the developer team. Just for people who are on the call and haven't been through this process before, while there's no doubt that the applicant and their team have done a fine job, towns typically work on a trust but verify system where you have a peer reviewer take a look at what they said and say whether their traffic analysis is right, and if not, where it should be improved, whether their wetland analysis is right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, baked into the statute and the regulations is a system under which the town can make reasonable requests for such peer reviews and get reasonable reimbursement. We cannot simply say we want the most expensive person available to do the most expensive job possible on every single aspect. We do not have that right, and wouldn't even if we did. So that's what Lynn's talking about. Sort of the next typical step in the process is to get somebody lined up to be the town's peer reviewer, someone we've worked with before. And Jeannie, if you'd talk with Jeremy about whether that's a good choice, that'd be fine.
I will.
Okay. So Lynn, I think we're going to try to get a quote from them, see where that goes. If Jeremy, I think I saw you on the phone. I think you are a procurement officer in addition to your many other hats.
Thanks, Rick. Yes, that's correct. And
All
I'll
right,
work
so,
with Jeannie on procuring your peer review consultant.
right, and if you or Gino or other members of the administration have strongly held views on who is good or bad at this, you know, our CONSCOM may have thoughts about who's right to do wetlands. Our Board of Health may have thoughts about who's right to do septic and water analysis. You should consider their views.
Will do. Thank you.
Ultimately, it's our choice as the board, but we're trying to work by consensus. Sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
And thank you. Yeah, we are on. It's complicated, so we are just as concerned about making sure that someone is qualified to do the work. I did also want to mention that you do have all the documents that are needed for review for traffic. You have the traffic study and the auto turns. And I know that Bob has had a number of conversations with the fire chief about you know, dry wells and so on and so forth. The engineer is finalizing the stormwater management plan, and we hope to have that to you by the end of the month. So we would hope that that might be, you know, we can do August traffic and then hopefully September stormwater management. So we just wanted to let you know that we recognize that is not in the package yet.
Okay. And again, just for everybody who hasn't been through this before, they're not required to submit the entire package at once. They're required to submit enough of a package to qualify as a legit filing. I believe this one probably does. But if people have concerns about that, they can certainly raise them. A question that I had, and maybe it's in the materials, I haven't spent a lot of time with them, Bob and Lynn, yet. How are you handling is there a title restriction? Isn't there a title restriction in the CONSCOM? Did it lapse? Is it live? Is it dead? Is that in your materials?
I'm sorry, Rick, could you clarify what you're asking?
Sure. Why don't you put up the big, can you put up the big site plan, Lynn?
No, hang on. And I may have Jonathan answer this question because I think we dealt with it back
Right.
in, hang on, it's just going to take me a second to click through. Or not. Hang on.
While she's looking for it, Jonathan, there have been information circulated in town indicating that around 1980, a restriction was put on some of the parcels just to the east of this one, and possibly affecting it. And then those parcels later went into the hands of the Conservation Commission. And of course, in 1980, or maybe it was 81, I don't have the facts right at my fingertips, would by its terms lapse under the 30-year statute about 2010. But if it's held by a conservation the right type of conservation agency doesn't lapse. And that's sort of as far as I've gotten to it, just sort of scratching the surface. Jonathan, sounds like you've taken a more careful look. Do you have an answer for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Jonathan Silverstein on behalf of the applicant. I'm pinch hitting tonight for my partner, Paul Haverty. So I'm not as intimately familiar with this application as he is, but I can say this. As Lynn indicated, the project has received a project eligibility letter from Mass Housing under the, I'm still going to say DHCD regulations. It's now EOHLC, I believe. The project eligibility letter shall be deemed conclusive as to a number of threshold matters, one of which is site control. So,
and yet the Wells Avenue case goes the other way, which is all of those agencies have no jurisdiction over title restrictions. So if you don't know the answer right now, that's okay. We don't have to answer right now. At some point in the process, we'll need to deal with it. That's the only flag I'm putting out now.
Rick, could I also ask, are you aware and have you reviewed your town council's letter of about 9 or 10 months ago? It was effectively a declination of pursuing anything about this issue, but I refer you.
That means maybe the town may have declined to pursue it, but that doesn't mean the problem is gone.
I understand. I just wanted
that's certainly a relevant factor.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware and had reviewed that letter.
No, I haven't reviewed that letter. I'm not aware of it, but I take it on face value that it's out there.
Yeah.
And that'll be something to decide. But again, if there were a clear title problem there, the fact that the affordable housing agencies didn't believe in it, or town council decided not to pursue it at that time, doesn't make it go away. I'm a professional real estate lawyer, that, you know. So, but Jonathan, I bet that Paul will have some well-developed thoughts on this for us, and he'll share them with us, and that'll be very useful.
Very well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Enough on that topic for now.
I mean, I did find our response from 8/5/2022. So there is a letter that we sent into Mass Housing on this. It may be worth taking a look at that response.
Sure. Are all those in your submission materials?
They were submitted as part of the PEL. I'm very happy to send it on.
Yeah,
to you
it might be good to just send it in as part of the materials for this, so anybody who wants to go look at it can see it all at once and decide whether there's a there or not. And the answer may be not.
Happy to.
We have the benefit of some select board members here. Do the select board have any thoughts they want to share at this time, or do you want to reserve your rights, which you're entitled to do?
I think we'll reserve our rights. Thank you.
Fair enough. Board of Health, same question. Anything you want to raise at this time? Not raising anything does not preclude you from raising other issues, but if there's a hot issue that you think is going to be worthy of discussion and you're willing to share it, that'd be great. No obligation, though.
The board needs to review the final set of plans, although I see, looking at different documents in the land development, I see some differences on how things are portrayed. I mean, the site portrayal, the watercolor drawing essentially does not match up with the plans. It's not the essential one, but I don't know if what is there is the final technical materials for us to review or not.
Bob or Bob or Lynn, are the final technical materials for the wells and the septic system, which would be Board of Health jurisdiction. Of course, we're sitting in for them under this statute. Are those final for them, or are those still sort of being developed, which would be fine?
So the well locations on the plan are final. What else were you asking about, Rick?
I was trying to pick up what Daryl was saying. Daryl, can you
So-
speak for yourself?
so
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it'd be better if Daryl explains what her concerns are so that I can address it, because I didn't, she said something about the renderings being different, and I'm not aware of what those differences are. If she could call them out, I could address it.
Okay, well, if you compare those aren't the most important. The wells and the septic obviously is a primary concern to the Board of Health. So are those in their final form or still being developed?
In terms of the location of those things, the wells and the septic?
Location and then the design and the specs for the septic. I understand the well would be more location at the moment because until installed, you don't have final specs.
So the locations of the wells are on the engineer drawings.
Yeah.
And I don't currently have any plans to change them.
Okay.
And as far as the septic system goes, I'm not sure if you're alluding to conflicts or differences. I mean, I could address it, but I'm not sure what you're talking about. So
I think that in DeShang or Bob, correct me if I'm wrong on this. It's my understanding that the wells and the septic system, leaching fields, et cetera, have all been located on the plans.
that's correct. Yes.
However, the developer at this point in time has not applied for a Title V permit under the town's Board of Health regulations and the State Board of Health regulations. As we go through this process, I believe it is the intent that Bob and DeShang will be working on all of those actual details in order to make that Title V finding, Title V application down the road. Therefore, there will be more detailed drawings at some point during this process.
But I'm just not aware of any conflicts that Daryl's alluding to. So,
Right,
everything is located where
just for your own illumination, let me check then what the
Sure.
exact title is of the document that I was talking about.
Okay.
Well,
again,
sorry, let me just clarify one thing. Things have moved around a lot over long periods of time. The definitive is what we've submitted in our application for a comprehensive permit on July the 6th. So if you're looking, Daryl, at earlier versions, then that won't work. You need to look at the definitive submission we made on July 6th. And Lynn is correct. We are going to give you, obviously, a full Title V application in the future, but we've not done that yet.
Okay. I am looking at our July documents.
Let me play back what.
Nothing at the moment beyond that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let me play back what I think I'm hearing from all of that, which is that as to the locations of the wells and the septic design and location and specification, they are not, as people say, cast in concrete, but those locations and designs as set forth in the July 6th filing, those are what's on the table. Those are what everybody should be looking at, right?
That is correct. Thank you, Rick. Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Are there other comments at this time? Again, necessarily preliminarily from the board. And after that, I'm going to ask members of the general public. And I'll start with Mr. Fitch, because you're our second senior most member. Anything you want to say at this time, or do you want to hold your own counsel and see what comes in?
Thank you, Rick, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything now. I'd like to hold my comments till I hear more from our fellow local board members and the public.
All right, awesome. Mr. McBride, what's your position?
Thanks, Rick. I'm going to hold my comments for now. Thank you.
What a cautious bunch. Todd?
Thanks, Rick. I'm going to hold my comments as well for now.
Okay, fine. And by the way, all of this is fine. Nobody is. This is like the old saying: "It's not over till it's over." Comments are not shut off until the end of the hearings, and the hearings are closed. But in fairness to the applicant team, it's often helpful to find out that, gee, everybody's up in arms about X or Y or Z, just so they know what's coming at them. Are there members of the public that want to make initial comments at this time? You're not foreclosed. You don't have to say anything at this point, but you may if you have questions. I saw some of them come up in the in the chat, and now would be a time to raise those. So, okay, good. Thank you for raising hands, people. Brian Moore, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm starting. Hello, good evening.
Yep,
Sorry,
you're
I'm
there.
trying to start the video. There we go. Thank you. My name is Brian Moore. I live at 49 Farm Road. Our concerns are many, and I think, Rick, one of our questions is, as concerned citizens, when you get down into the minutia of the stormwater, of the well, of the septic, of all these little parts, when you have a centralized permitting process through your board, as citizens, we should be attending in these meetings of the other boards when they prepare their comments. Is that how we get heard during this process?
Okay, smart question. And I should have covered it in the preliminary. Technically, we are subbing in for in terms of legal authority. The Board of Health is just an advisor to us here. Usually they issue the permits. Now we will issue the permits on their behalf. Same with Planning Board for subdivision type issues. Same with CONSCOM for wetlands type issues. So the concerned citizen who is really interested would attend the other boards. I'll use the example of the Board of Health boards to hear what they have to say, but you do not necessarily need to speak up with them. You should speak up with us because we are the decision maker. Certainly, you're not prohibited. You're not prohibited from raising your concerns with them.
And if we decide that we would like to have a third party at our own expense review said plans, we can do that and table that with those boards, or do we have to table them in front of your board?
Well, if you want them to have any impact with us, I suggest you bring them to us. Okay. And you're perfectly free to do for that. That is a common abutter behavior. They hire their own people to sort of second guess the applicant's engineers and the or third guess the applicant's engineers and the peer reviewers. And there is nothing wrong with that. It's an absolutely legitimate part of the process, but definitely bring whatever results you have if you want us to be influenced by them to us.
Thank you. And I'd also like to welcome, I guess, some new members to your board who are volunteering. Congratulations. Volunteerism in our town is, we very much appreciate whatever help our boards can get. And the final comment I had was, I was just concerned that for the last 2 years, my wife and I, who live next door, have been concerned about this development taking place. And in our very first conversations with the applicant, they started off with, there's going to be a bunch of homes over here up in the hill, and it's going to be tucked away. And our concerns were that it was going to be a large project. Well, at that time, everyone on our street and everyone in the neighborhood understood there to be a conservation restriction or easement on the land that prevented such development. And our concern is that, you know, if the applicant acquired the land under those pretexts and then is able to somehow negate them, that it seems to me as though that's something that should be rectifiable, because other people own the land before the applicant and felt they were unable to do such development because of some of these restrictions. And other places in town, like on Lake Street, people do have successful conservation restrictions on their land and they benefit from them. But apparently on our street next to our house, that doesn't apply. So our concerns are that it's like a sliding scale of expectations. And I'm glad I was able to get that in the record. And thank you, Rick, for letting me have my comments.
Well, and what you should do if you're concerned about that issue is you and your lawyer should look carefully at the materials that will come in from Mr. Haverty and what our town council had to say, which I haven't looked at. And then you and your lawyer will have to decide whether you think there is a legitimate claim that the conservation restriction applies and is applicable here. And then you'll have to decide what, if anything, you're going to do about that. But it's not that it's a different part of town or different rules for different people. The question is just purely a legal one. And I think it won't depend on factual stuff so much as the legalities of, is that thing still alive or not? And even if it is still alive, was it ever applicable to this parcel? It is what it is. Looks like Mary Moore, maybe. Oh, you need to unmute yourself, sorry. There you go.
Thank you for recognizing me. I just had a quick question. I had done a little research on the Mass Housing website, and I thought I had seen that a restriction was for 30 years for some of these affordable units. And I put something in the chat, and I just wanted to clarify. I think Ms. Sweet responded, but I just wanted to clarify what that restriction is.
That is another good question.
These affordable units have a restriction that it can't be not affordable for 30 years. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct, actually, but it's a smart question to ask. The title restriction, you can't put a barn on the left end of your property, and without your neighbor's consent. Those have a 30-year time limit that's in the statutes. The affordable housing restrictions are exempted, and they are literally for forever.
Okay. Okay.
Only because they're under a special statute. They're different.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions people want to make now? Michael Lesser.
Hi, Michael Lesser, speaking as co-chair of the Conservation Commission. I just want to point out a little bit, whether it's that for the general public, as well as what's in reference to what you just said, Rick, that you will be representing us in terms of the local bylaw and the local regulations, that there's still a separate permitting issue of coming under the State Wetlands Protection Act and a separate permitting process that we'll do. We will coordinate with Gino, if that's the person doing it, in terms of the peer review. So they're coordinated for both in terms of the local bylaw stuff, as well as any of the next stage as well under the state. So we'll work with him directly on the scope of work for the peer review. But I just want that general point.
That would be great, and as always, your board's input on the wetlands and conscom issues is important to us, and so we look forward to getting it.
Okay, thank you.
Susan McPherson.
Hi there, Susan McPherson, 9 Great Rock Road. I just have a question relative to the plan for these houses. I didn't notice it on the plan, Bob. Do these units have basements?
Mr. Chair?
Well, the question was directed to you, so I'll allow you to answer it, please.
I was just showing you the courtesy of making sure that
it's all right. It's okay. We're not super formal on them. Please go ahead.
Thank you. The answer is, it is our intent to have basements. To the extent there is ledge that's in the way, we will probably not have basements in those particular places. So the plan is for them all to have basements, but I don't know that will be the outcome.
And I guess where I'm going with this question is, if they do have basements, especially in the 3-bedroom units, how will these be impacted with respect to the septic system and room count?
Sure. As you may know, Title V is different from the local regulations, and I won't get into a lot of detail here. We can kind of get into it down the road. But one of the ways that's typically handled under Title V is with a deed restriction that the basement cannot be used as a bedroom.
But it will still add to the room count, correct?
The room count is a local bylaw, not a.
Let me try to intermediate that discussion just a little bit. It's a live issue, Susan and Bob, in all of our 40Bs, because as soon as somebody moves in, they see the basement and say, "Great, what a nice big box! I'm going to cut this up into a few more rooms and put my kids down there." And that's exactly what we can't let them do. And so there are lots of restrictions about that, but it's a very live issue to be watched, Susan, and a fair one to raise.
Sure, absolutely.
Tom Trainer looks like he's got his hand up.
Rick, thank you. Tom Trainer, 97 Washington Street. But I also have I guess, a procedural question as chair of the Groundwater Protection Committee. And for those of you who are not aware of us, we're just a small group of volunteers really concerned about long-term viability of our groundwater. And of course, we have no staff, no budget, and no regulatory role in the town. So my question, we actually sent in a list of comments to the ZBA yesterday. And I just want to make sure, A, you received that, and B, given this very important role of the peer reviewers, I'm hoping that can be shared with the peer reviewers.
Yes, I think it definitely, sure, go ahead, Jonathan.
I meant to mention that memo we got dated July 31 from the Sherborn Groundwater Protection Committee. It was very detailed and quite useful. And Mr. Chair, I would hope that our independent reviewer is going to study and comment on all of the concerns raised in that July 31 memo.
I hope so too, and I bet we can count on Jeannie Guthrie to make sure it lands in the reviewer's lap. Can't we, Jeannie?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, and putting in a plug for the Groundwater Protection Committee, who, unlike the rest of us who are fully paid and well staffed and supported in every way, they do a great job and have been very helpful to us in other projects, and we welcome your commentary.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Other questions for now? All right, well, let's talk, Lynn, a little bit about what makes sense for timing. The statute puts a very short fuse gun to the board's head to get the hearing opened right away. That's why we had to send this notice out right away and get it, because we have to open within 30 days. We're well under that deadline. But we are also obliged to move through the process responsively, deliberately. If we said, guess what, Bob, nice to see you, I'll see you in 179 days, that would not be good faith. That would not be fair. We would get no support from the state on that. Likewise, if Bob said, I'd like to meet every day for the next 3 weeks, we probably wouldn't go along with that, and the progress for the project wouldn't go very well. So, Lynn, what makes sense for a next meeting? When do you think?
I mean, I'm thinking right after Labor Day. I think it's going to take you, a week or so to get a quote in for, the traffic, and then to get their response and for us to respond. I think putting something in the last week of August is going to be torturous for everybody. When do you have a normal meeting? Do you have another meeting scheduled?
Not at this time.
Okay.
But
yeah. So is there a particular?
I don't have my calendar open.
Night?
Let's take a look at. Because we've got to get something that works for all the board members too.
Yeah.
So board members.
So Labor Day is the 4th.
The day after Labor Day tends to be jammed up as the entire business world comes back from vacation, wakes up and says, holy cow, I didn't do anything since March, since May.
I know. I'm clicking on the 7th myself.
Board members, could Thursday the 7th work?
That's fine for me.
Yes, it works for me, Rick.
Okay. And was that was Zach saying yes, and Todd, Thursday the 7th?
Jonathan, are you good with that?
Yes, I am.
I heard Jonathan.
Sorry,
say,
my
okay.
Jonathan Silverstein.
Oh, okay.
That's fine for me if Paul is unavailable.
Okay, and Bob?
Works for me, yes.
Okay, so we just need to check in with Jeff. Okay.
Todd?
Yeah, this is Todd. Yeah, the 7th is open for me.
Okay. Zach, you said yes, right? Okay. That can work for me. So that's 4 out of 4 for us. But let's ask the most important person, Jeannie.
It's here I am. It's good.
Are you back from Italy is the question.
I haven't left. I don't leave for Italy till the 19th. So that's good.
Ah, brilliant plan. Okay.
I will ask a quick question. Will we have time to do a quick petition beforehand?
Sure.
For a renewal?
Sure.
Okay.
There's no reason we can't stack that up.
Okay, great.
The other question, and I apologize for not bringing it up sooner because I know there are new members that may not have been on the site walk with the project eligibility letter. If their board members wish to go on a site walk, we're happy to schedule that as well.
I missed the PEL site walk and would actually would go on that myself. So
do you want to send us some suggestions of when that might work for everybody, or do you want to make a decision on that today?
We can probably email around on that. That's different than us going offline and, outside the hearing, reaching a secret decision, which obviously we can't do and wouldn't do. But I think we can probably email amongst ourselves, when would be a good time for a site walk. Now, Todd, Zach, Jonathan, if we're on the site walk, we really can't talk business amongst ourselves because it's not going to be an advertised meeting, but we can be there and ask questions of Lynn or who's ever leading it.
Okay, thank you. I was on the last site walk, and I still might attend the next one, but I am familiar with the site.
Okay, great. All right.
I would find that valuable as well.
Yeah. All right. Are there anybody, board members, other boards, citizens, applicant team? Oh, Jeannie, yes.
There's a problem.
Yes.
The select board have their meeting that night.
Yeah, who cares about them? I mean,
well,
maybe.
And I believe they're signing the warrant for the special town meeting that's coming up in October.
So they might need you, and we might not have you.
No, they don't need me. I just didn't know whether they wanted to be involved with this meeting.
My instinct is we can watch the YouTube recording of it.
All right, great.
Actually, Rick, I apologize. I didn't realize there was that conflict, but I would very much like to be at that select board meeting. I have an interest in that meeting, a significant interest in that meeting.
Do we want to potentially look at the 6th as an alternative, which is the Wednesday?
Could that work, board members?
Yeah, that could work for me.
Great, thank you so much.
Todd?
Yeah, no issue for me.
That's fine.
Jonathan? Okay, so how about 9/6? Everybody wind up your arm and throw rocks at the 6th.
Oh, geez, it's my birthday. Okay, that's all right. I'll show up.
We'll bring it. We'll bring
a cake.
We'll have a cake.
Cupcakes. Brian, Mr. Moore.
Yes, I just I had one other question. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask this earlier, Mr. Novak. When we hear discussions from people like people do the stuff next door, Sherborn, I don't do it, but there's a lot of other people discussing this project out there.
Sure.
I just want to make sure people understand that what occurs at the town level during this process is that you are allowed the opportunity to waive certain town bylaws in the applicant's interest of furthering this project. It is not I'm showing my, get out of jail free card and I just do what I want. You actually have to have a reasonable argument to waive a certain provision of the town bylaw. Is that correct?
That's actually backwards. We have to have a certain. We have to have good reason to enforce a town bylaw if he asks for a waiver.
And so, is that again at the? Sorry, is that again at those individual meetings, or is that at your board?
No, it's at our board. It's at our board because you may recall a slide Bob put up which showed their request for waivers, which is a very common part of the process and actually a very important part of our decision for him and for us to be able to say, there were 12 parts of the zoning bylaw that made him crazy, mostly one house on one lot, but there's a bunch of other little ones. And if he forgot to ask for a key one, he's cooked. So that's why it's important for him to ask carefully and for us to think carefully about what we're giving him, because there's no backsies, there's no, well, that was kind of implied.
Well,
he's got to ask for it.
In considering those conditions, is one able to look at precedent from previous court cases, or is one bound only? Are there some blinders on the decision process?
I don't, Jonathan, you can tell me if I've got it wrong. I don't think there's going to be a lot of case law research that's going to help. If, for example, and I don't think this is the case here, but let's say this project wanted to put a 35-foot high concrete wall 2 feet from the property line where some kid was playing next door. And we said, gee, we don't think that's right. And the developer said, well, tough, we want it waived. Probably we would not be supported in turning that down, but most developers want to work with you at least some. But that would not be a matter, Jonathan, I think, of looking at research of other cases that where other ZBAs gave 40B. It would be whether or not we had a substantial local interest in moving that wall back. What do you think,
Okay,
Jonathan?
thank you for
right.
That's right.
Thank you for hearing my question. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's not that people should on Facebook or Nextdoor Sherborn say, well, Bob Murchison hasn't persuaded me that he can have more than one house on 1 acre. That's not up to them. They have to come up with a good reason why he can't. Sorry, Ms. Beardsley. Daryl?
Hi, yes, Daryl here. I just wanted to note that the Board of Health will be having their meeting that night. So as long as there's nothing and no one from our board will be able to attend the ZBA meeting. So as long as it's not important that we're there that particular evening.
We will not misinterpret your silence as complete and unmitigated and forever support of the project. Fair?
Or that we won't miss things that, well, we could listen to the recording, but if you need our feedback on anything, we won't be able to provide it at that meeting.
Right. That's okay. We get that. I'm anticipating, and Bob and Lynn, tell me if it's wrong, that we're probably going to have much more detailed discussions about the wells and the septic systems after September 6th.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. I think, again, we're focusing on traffic, fire, and public safety, I believe.
And hopefully we'll have gotten some feedback from the peer reviewers on how long it's going to take them to unpack which part of the project.
Yeah. And obviously we can't do stormwater until we've given you stormwater, which we're hoping is the end of the month. And, so yeah, I think Daryl, you're okay to miss it.
Okay. Do I see other hands up? Jeannie, am I missing any? Oh, Daryl Beardsley again. Oh.
No, that was just a thumbs up.
Oh, that's the thumb.
Lynn's
that's the
comment.
okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I wasn't paying attention to how many fingers you had up.
Megan Tapley has her hand up.
Megan Tapley, please.
Good evening. Actually, this is Tim Tapley, clearly the much worse half of the Tapley clan, 17 Great Rock Road. Quick question. I put it in the chat, but probably not very eloquently. If an interested party has information on the applicant, one way or the other, and the applicant's history on prior projects, and whether they've done those projects successfully, whether they've done them in a way that's wonderfully accepted by the community, or maybe on the other side, they've done them in a way that has not been in compliance with the plans that were submitted, maybe we're in violation of the law. someone were to have that information on an applicant, is that information that can be submitted? And if it can, would it be considered? And then finally, where would it be submitted? Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time, and thanks for all the volunteers.
That's a whole bunch of questions. Let me try to unpack them and see if I can be responsive. You would submit that information to us. We're the permit. We're the people issuing the permit here. We're the what was it George Bush said? We're the decider. But you'd want to be careful to have whatever you submitted be relevant to our consideration of this project. If you thought the applicant was a bad person, or went to the wrong church, or went to the right church, or was mean to children, or was mean to old people, or things like that, technically that's not our jurisdiction. If the applicant has a 5-year track record of being caught using defective concrete and the houses fell down and people were hurt, that is relevant. And we will decide how relevant something is and how much to weigh it. So it's not a popularity contest. Does that answer the question, I hope?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Select Board Member Marian Neutra.
Thanks, Rick. I have a much simpler question. Is the very latest rendition of your site plan available on the town website? I asked this for myself and for everyone else. Can we see it on the town website? Yeah, I guess that's also the PowerPoint list that you showed of things that have been changed. Can we have access to that list? And do the changes that would affect the site plan show up on new plans, and can we see them?
Rick,
Bob, I'll ask you to respond to that, please.
Sure. So the definitive site plan was submitted on July the 6th and is, to my knowledge, still up on the town website. I'm sorry, Marion, you're asking about so the slide deck that I presented tonight will also be on the website by tomorrow morning. Jeannie can tell us. But are you, nothing that I can think of has changed since we submitted on July 6th. So,
and that is the current site plan on the website. Yeah.
Yes. And the presentation that Lynn gave tonight is also up.
Okay, perfect. That's good.
Okay. Another question.
I also put a link to the presentation into the chat.
Great. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Rick.
No.
So someone has asked, are there large copies? I believe, and Jeannie can hopefully confirm this, I believe we did give some large sets of plans that hopefully are on file at Town Hall.
Okay.
She's got them.
There's a question in the chat about whether members of the public who are not members of the ZBA will be allowed on the site walk. That is up to the developer. This isn't even the official site. This is a additional site walk that they don't have to do. They're just offering it to be helpful to the board. Do you have thoughts on that, applicant team, or do you want to respond to that later, or what's your position?
Do you have a strong view, Rick?
Well, in general, if people are going to be well-behaved and non-disruptive, I think it's important. You know, the more information, the better. I think it's probably in your interest to have disclosure, but it's your property. And some developers are fairly territorial about, I don't want anybody on my property because they're going to say something inappropriate, do something inappropriate, or see some molehill and turn it into a mountain. So it's up to you. But maybe do you and Lynn and your lawyer want to take that away and decide amongst yourselves?
We do, because yeah, we typically don't allow it, and some of it is also a liability, you know, kind of a question as well.
You can get waivers.
We will shoot you off an email once we've put our heads together.
All right, thank you very much. And then Jeannie, maybe you can put that response up on the website so that any member of the public who's interested doesn't have to, you know, come ask the board. They can look it up on the website. Other questions? I don't see other hands up. But of course, in the way we have the screen view with the 50 odd people here, I can't necessarily see anything. I don't see any other hands up. Okay. So it's 8:24. I was planning to send everybody home unless somebody has a good idea about something else we should be talking about. Of course, you all are home, but send you off to do other things. Board members, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Or no, a motion to continue the hearing till September 6th, 2023 at 7 p.m. by Zoom.
Okay. I move to continue the hearing to 7 o'clock on September 6th.
All right. Is there a second for that?
Seconded from Zach.
Okay, seconded. Any further discussion amongst the board? Okay. All in favor? Vote. We have to, because it's electronic, we have to do it by roll call and by name. Novak votes aye.
Pitch, aye.
McBride, aye.
Todd, your vote doesn't count, but you can vote anyway if you want.
Aye.
Okay. And by the way, a housekeeping matter I didn't touch on, Todd. We try very hard to treat the associate member, certainly when I was the associate member, as a full member for all purposes except the statutory limit on maybe your vote doesn't count. But we work so hard to work by consensus that it's rarely a matter of, well, we're just going to outvote that associate member. So we want you to speak up, please.
I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ciao, guys. Thanks.